All right, second video I'm recording today. I either record ahead of time. Usually it's a week, but this time or within a few days. So sometimes it's like this one will be uploaded tomorrow on Wednesday, or sometimes I'll say that say that. Sometimes I like doing one per week, so I'll just push it till the next week. But because of the comic haul, I was like, yeah, I don't want to wait that. I don't want to have to wait. I think guys to wait that long, and I like the consistency. And plus, this is a comic review, and I did kind of do it backwards. Usually, I do comic review and then comics I'll be reading for the next few weeks, but I kind of flipped it for a reason. I was finishing up these books, and I know I want more to get more books for after I was done with that stack, and it was kind of like what, break the rule. This is one time. I know I'm confusing everybody, but basically, what I like to do is I like to have this set of books reviewed, and then the next set of books is the books I'll be reading for the next few weeks. I don't like to confuse anybody when they're like, wait, you haven't finished this book yet. Why we having a review? What? And that's why I do it the other way around. All right. Now, I did not finish most of the OGNs. I still have to finish. Actually, where is that? It's in the closet. The OGNs that I had was with Lore Olympus, 6 days. Those ones I didn't have time to finish. Actually, I can know all of them. The End of the Fucking World and Hazards of Love. I think it was the only ones. Oh, and the new one they got that you haven't seen yet. Oh, and also there's a bonus book here, too. So let's get into it. First up is Diesel Ignition, and Wind This Is Not. Wind being the James Tynion wind, spelled W-Y-N-D, not the usual way you spell it. This wants to be wind so hard and it falls so flat. However, I seem to be in the minority, because this has a 4.2 on Goodreads, and this isn't the case of Nubia Real One, where it has that high of a score for a political reason. This has a high score because I think people enjoyed this one. It is enjoyable enough. I can see why people enjoyed it, but this was a slog to get through, and I could not wait to finish this one. And this was pretty lengthy. Like even though every chapter was your average amount of pages per issue, I felt each and every page of this book. And I was reading it one issue per day. So my usual reading speed, usual reading everything, and it still felt like I could still feel every page. It was not good, and I will not be. I don't know if I even would do a reread of this one. Maybe a year down the line, and even that is a bit of a stretch in saying it's a bit too short amount of time. I didn't like this one at all. 3 out of 10. The artwork, and the artwork is kind of annoying too. It kind of has that like overly cartoony look to it, which I don't mind. And then that's what they're going for. That's fine. Some of the characters just designed in an annoying way. One of the characters has like this. He has horns. I guess it's supposed to be like a somewhat of a fantastical character, but he has these sunglasses, and it makes him look like that kid from Codename Kids Next Door. And honestly, that was the whole reason why I never checked out that show as a kid. Even as a kid, I'm like, this kid is going to be super obnoxious, isn't he? Oh, yep, he is. And now I'm just going to go watch Foster's Home instead. And that show is probably just as annoying, but it was just that like overly like dude bro. I always, and even as a kid, I kind of hated that. Say kind of because it wasn't all the time, but that's that overly like. That was one of those shows I just never liked, and I just made 1,000 enemies. But whatever. Smooth Criminals. Now this one started out annoying. The main character is one of those overly energetic characters that just comes off as annoying. Like, hey bro, that's what I'm talking about. Let's go. Like that catchphrase, it was just so goddamn annoying. I was like, shut the fuck up. Like I almost screamed that out loud because it's just constant hitting you over the head with it. And it's a woman. It's a woman, and her boss is this overly mean-spirited character, and it just hits you over the head with it. How mean he is. He does the thing where he says like, oh, "Watch where you're going," and it's like overly exaggerated for comedic effect and just falls flat. And it's just it doesn't. None of the characters seem real. But as the book goes along, they completely get rid of the boss character. He comes in every now and then, but he's not as annoying. They really like exercise his annoying demon in him that was making him so annoying. Not completely, but enough to where he's not as annoying. And same for our main character. And I actually did get attached to the main character. I did like what they did with this character. They didn't make her super annoying. They gave her an actual personality as the book went along, and you care for these characters. Except for, of course, the villains. But this one was so good that I actually almost put in a request for Volume 2 right away. But I'm going to wait because, again, I have enough of a stack of books to read. Not too much. It's just like, you know what? I don't want to add another book. And I kind of like how it's now all the books that are the Image Comics books pile. Like it's all from that pile. They're all the Image Comics writers doing work for other publishers, whereas this was a miscellaneous writers pile who have done nothing for Image, or maybe a 5-page anthology, and that's it. In Al Ewing's case, but no Al Ewing books in this case. No Al Ewing books in the stack. Moving on. Bookmark fell out. It doesn't even say anything about me needing to return the bookmark, but I still want to. I should actually ask, because I like getting bookmarks. The more the merrier, in my opinion, for bookmarks. Okay, so Smooth Criminals. And I'll obviously be doing the out of 10 review at the end. I think I should just keep that consistent. I think it's a nice way to completely conclude the entire video. And if ever I need to remember what I read put it on Instagram, make a post on Instagram, hey, I just gotta skip to the end, and then I show them off, and it's like a speed run, basically. Like, oh, Diesel, blank out of 10. Oh, actually, no, I did do out of 10. Never mind. Forget what I said. Alright, Smooth Criminals gets a 7.5 out of 10. Yeah, I forgot I did that. See, going back to yesterday's video when I was saying how forgetful I was, that's another example. This is why I don't edit my videos, by the way. I like this more. This is a good reason for why I don't edit my videos. I like this more like down to earth, laid back approach to things. Because I think if anything, I would edit out all of that and just get to the meat of the video. Like, I'm reviewing the comics. Yeah, a little tangent here and there. Maybe going off on how much I hate the author, but they actually wrote something good, and how that is a great example of separating the art from the artist. That's a great tangent. It's related to the video. But mentioning something about myself, it's kind of like, it's a bit too off topic. But but not editing it, you guys need to know how forgetful I am. And it's a callback to yesterday's video, and it feels more personal. It feels like I'm actually talking to somebody. Because that's what I want this YouTube video to be. Like I'm talking to somebody, maybe on like a Zoom call or something like that, and all your commenters are the ones that are, or it's like a live video or something like that. That's also what I like this, what I like these videos to feel like. It's like it's a live stream, but without live stream elements that just taking forever to upload. I don't know why that happens. I would do more live streams if that were the case. But also, it's not live comments. The comments stay there unless I remove them. Or YouTube removes them for whatever reason. Moving on. The Deep by Tom Taylor. Now, the artwork here is, at times, like, annoying. I want to find a good example. Because the facial expressions here made me cringe so many times that if I binge read this and I did a drinking game for every cringe facial expression, I'd be dead by chapter 3. This one's not the best example, but it's a good example nonetheless. Just these annoying facial expressions, overly goofy. I get it, it's a kid's book, but I probably, even as a kid, would have still been as annoyed as I am now as an adult. Now, that's not a good little tangent, is that I'm fine with reading kids' books, kids' comics. I don't think I'd ever read, like, the Saturday morning cartoon Spider-Man one they made from the Spider-Man cartoons, even anything. It's like Lego, like, basically like preschool comics. I don't think I'd ever check those out. But these all ages books, like The Deep, Scary, Everyday Hero Machine Boy, and hell, even Diesel, I don't mind checking out, because the content still interests me enough to check it out, despite the age demographic. So I still do check these out. And this one I did enjoy. I actually thoroughly enjoyed this one. Would not mind getting a volume 2 of the series, if there is one. It's one of those series that, without giving too much away, it has that ending where you could tell more stories, but also maybe you don't have to. It gets one of those rare times where that happens, rare instances. All right, come on, I gotta have one little cringe. I know where it is. This one's a good example. Like, just these overly, just imagine that but worse, and that's a lot of the visuals in this comic. But other than that, and that's a very small nitpick. But other than that, this book I never felt like I was being talked down to reading this comic. In fact, if they did not have the junior tag on this, juvenile tag on this book, I would have said young adults, like like Marvel T. Marvel T is like, that's T for T, not T as in TEA, but T as in a letter T. But Marvel T rated books are usually like PG, where they have something in there that's a little bit much for a preschooler to read, but they can still read it just fine. It's kind of like maybe they swear once or twice the entire run of a 10-volume series, or it's bit a bit more like heavy hitting, like they deal with, like, it's not like super, it's one of those books. But basically, like all the Spider-Man books are rated T for the most part. So it's that like kind of PG slash maybe PG-13, that's little window there. That's what Marvel T is. Like a Moon Girl, PG all the way. Spider-Man, PG-13, or maybe again in the middle, really, for Spider-Man. All right, but anyways, moving on. And that's how this book felt. That's what I would have said. But seeing as it's a junior graphic novel, yeah, a kid can read this. Again, it's juvenile, but I always say junior, because I think Nick Jr. Or Bowth Jr. Seven Secrets, Volume 1, also written by Tom Taylor. That's why I mentioned it before with The Deep. I found that there's a nice little Easter egg in this book, by the way. They show like gifts that the father gave to his son, and one of them is the first issue of The Deep, also written by Tom Taylor. I thought that was a cute little nod. It didn't beat you over the head with it. It wasn't Tom Taylor being really cheeky and thinking he's so damn clever. It was just a nice little Easter egg, and I appreciated that. And I think they're all series from Boom Studios too, which was a nice little nod, a nice addition. Nice little addition there. I'm not gonna be able to find it now. But this one, I felt at times felt like those Hunger Games ripoff books in movies that always bomb at the box office, and once you grew up, you threw the books away. Like, you kept Hunger Games, sure, Hunger Games is like it still holds up, but everything else just did not hold up, and you sold it, or it was a hand-me-down to your younger sibling. That's how this book felt at times. But at other times, this book feels like it does want to try to be something different, does want to try to appeal to a wider age demographic, a wider just demographic in general. But the story is just weird and kind of lame, honestly. But just good enough to where I do want to see what happens next. However, if my library does not have Volume 2, and it certainly doesn't really have Volume 3, although they might, it's one of those things where it's like, do they or don't they? It's hard to explain. I had to go on a little tangent. I kind of don't want to explain it. But basically, it's showing a cover, and I'm like, is that Volume 3? I should probably explain it. Is that Volume 3? Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. And sometimes it will be, sometimes it won't be. That's where it gets a little more complicated. I will not get into that. But if they don't have Volumes 2 or 3, I won't lose sleep over not finishing the series. But yeah, where is the Easter egg? There it is. Okay, it's just two. Yeah, they are all Boom Studios books. It's just two comics though. But yeah, both from Boom Studios. It's kind of funny. One's Cub Boom, the kitty Boom Studios, and one is just Boom Studios in general, like this book is. Where it could be like this one, they censor the harsher language, so it definitely is PG-13. I think We Find Them When They're Dead may have uncensored the language. And they had like F words and S words, so fucking shit. So it was R. I don't know. I don't remember. We Only Find Them When They're Dead is just so crazy that it's just so insane with the visuals that, if anything, I just like, it's so all over the place. I'm trying to get my thought across. So you kind of, I won't say that you forget it, but it's just like all in one like glob for me, I guess you could say. Hard to explain without you guys knowing what we only find them in their date is. Let's move on. But yeah, Seven Secrets, I would give a 6 out of 10. It's average. Now here is the surprise comic, and that is Ancestor. Ancestor was one that I got last minute. Now, those of you who saw my comic haul for last month will probably say, why did you read this book already? Why are you showing off a book that you owned? Usually you like to do just library books. I mean, yeah, you'll add one from your personal collection, but it'll be within that parameter. This is not a miscellaneous comic. This does not count as that. Well, it's the library's copy. I wanted to do that for one of the books I got this month, and I chose Ancestor. And I found it really ironic that of all the comics, the one that they had was Ancestor. They didn't even have Monarch by Rodney Barnes, and they had like the first volume of Philadelphia, and that was it. So I wanted to do something that was complete, and this was, and it was like, hey, look no further than Ancestor. And I thoroughly enjoyed this one. I am so glad that I, off a whim, bought this one without knowing anything about it, not even knowing who the authors were. And I am so glad I did this because this ended up being a major surprise and one of those underrated comics that no one talks about to the nth degree. This needs to be read by more people. And I give this one an 8.5 out of 10. The reason why that is because the ending is super bizarre, but I think on a reread, maybe I should pay more attention to certain details because it might just end up being one of those endings that if you are paying attention, it does make perfect sense and it wraps it up all in a nice little bow. But I have my doubts. Still, 3/4 of this comic is absolutely phenomenal. Even the bizarre ending is just like, it's kind of just out of nowhere. But it's still enjoyable. It does not affect my overall enjoyment of the comic too much. I would probably give it a 9 out of 10 if it weren't for the bizarre ending, but as is, I give it an 8.5. I will definitely consider, I definitely will, not even consider it, I just will, make it and push up to a 9 if I reread this book and the ending makes more sense on a reread. But as is, 8.5 out of 10 is still one that I like, cannot recommend enough. Definitely check this one out if you like sci-fi. And even if you don't, this is probably one of those nice little introductions into the more strange side of sci-fi, where it's less about like aliens and monster and space as it is just that weird, like, this is like futuristic kind of world, like that kind of thing. There's something that is utilized, and I do want to mention this. This is not really a spoiler, but I am revealing plot elements, so I can't do the hand because I'm trying to show you guys the artwork, but I will do this when we're done with spoilers. So I'm done with doing this. That means done with spoilers. So you can mute the video until I do this. All right. So those of you who are still here, hopefully you have read this comic. I really love this little visual. So this little visual is the characters can see this from other characters. And it's like I don't know if it's like a drug that they take. They take something because they can shut it off if they want to shut it off. And it tells you about these characters. It's basically like a real world Google. And it's a small thing, but it just allows for such a huge creative element in this comic. And it makes the comic just that much better. It's just so creative. And they do a lot with it. They do kind of, I wouldn't say forget about it, but they do kind of like, they don't have it for the entire comic. And I kind of wish they would use a little bit more, but even then I'm like, yeah, do I even wish that? Because I think they use it for the right amount of time. Because the visual is kind of annoying. There's a lot of text and it does get kind of annoying to read all that, but still insanely creative element to add to this comic. And it just adds a lot to the overall, especially to the first chapter of this story. And again, maybe the ending makes more sense with that added element, but I don't know. So here it is, the wave again. Now we're done with spoilers. So Ancestor, again, 8.5 out of 10. The Vein. So a lot of these books I went in completely blind with, and I am so glad I did this with The Vein. So I am going to keep this short. I figured out what was going to happen like about like 10 pages in or so, and then when I found it out, I was like, I am so smart. And it's one of those books that, like, it's kind of like Get Out. If you've seen that movie by Jordan Peele, how some people were able to draw connections early on in the movie before they even have watched it for a second time because of the twist. That's kind of how it was for me reading the first few in the first few pages of the first chapter of The Vein. However, this does have one major downside, and that this should not have been as short as this book was. There is way too much information given to us, way too much just jumping around. Because this does, minor spoiler, it takes place from 1940 to present time, and that is way too much to the story to tell you for the characters and everything for it to only be 5 issues. I would say this should have been at the very least an 8-issue miniseries, not a 5-issue miniseries with each chapter being the average amount of pages. It would be like 5 more pages each chapter. But this has no business being this short with the story that it's telling. That is a major downside to this book, but everything else is great. So 7 out of 10. I enjoyed it a hell of a lot more than I did 7 Secrets. Breek. This might just be my pick of the week. This was absolutely phenomenal. I don't count Ancestor as pick of the week, but maybe I do, maybe I don't. But no, actually I don't, because I got Ancestor much later. So Ancestor does not technically count. It is pick of the week, but pick of the week of so far of the miscellaneous comics, I guess, maybe. I don't know. In between, not miscellaneous comics, sorry. The in-between comics, I don't know, like, Ancestor, you know what, Ancestor is its own thing. How about that? Alright, anyways, Breek, pick of the week for the miscellaneous comics, I feel at least, because this was a major surprise. I knew nothing about this series. I only knew the writer was pretty damn good, and that's Adam Glass. And also co-authored by Michael Benson, who did that Moon Knight run that everyone feels is super underrated, and I will definitely consider checking out. Or is it Venus? So many Moon Knight books. What's funny is that I think there's the Venus and the Bendis. Or maybe I'm just thinking Benson. I don't know. But Breek, absolutely phenomenal. Such a pretty damn unique story, and it's just my kind of story. I think you call this urban fantasy. I think. It's like Hellboy meets... It's like Hellboy street level kind of story. That's what this is. That's... Honestly, if you like Hellboy, you'll like this one. But it's less... Like, it's its own thing. Definitely its own thing. Like, this could not exist in the Hellboy universe. It's just reminiscent of Hellboy in the sense that I could totally... No, I didn't see Mike Mignola writing this. Again, it really is its own thing. But it is for fans of Hellboy. If you want something that kind of sort of feels like Hellboy, but is its own thing, look no further than Breek. Perfect way to explain it. 9 out of 10. No, 9.5, honestly. Blue Flame. If this had been my first time reading this would be the pick of the week by landslide. I still think this is an insanely incredible comic. I still think that one little downside is the whole trial with the alien subplot. But honestly, this time, it culminates in an absolutely incredible conclusion that brings everything to just a perfect ending. Like a perfect ending of that storyline. Because it does also have a point for existing. There is a point for this subplot to exist. Because it goes back to the central theme of this comic. Which I will not spoil. You can probably put 2 and 2 together, but I will not spoil it. This should be read by everybody. Do not be so biased because it's, oh, Christopher Cantwell, he ruined Iron Man. No. This is Christopher Cantwell trying his hardest, and he absolutely knocks it out of the park. One minor downside is that they have another subplot in this comic, and it kind of is concluded in a way where you're like, yeah, you mentioned this, I think, in dialogue, but how were you able to go from point A to point F so quickly? That kind of seems a bit convoluted. But and also to the point where it's like, why even have that in your comic? That subplot. It kind of is technically a bit unnecessary if you think about it, because of the way it is concluded. But that's a huge nitpick. This should be read by everybody. 9.5 out of 10. Honestly, I think a 10 out of 10. Yeah, you know what? 10 out of 10 for Blue Flame. Because again, the downsides are justified, even. Like, again, like this subplot they didn't like with the trial, the way it's concluded, it honestly makes up for it. The other subplot, which I'll not spoil, having a weird conclusion, that's a nitpick. And honestly, I did like that subplot. It just kind of was like, I was so invested in this, and you kind of ended it quickly. Why? Justice League International Volume 2 is just okay. It's basic, your most basic bitch comic ever written. And it should not be basic bitch because it's written by Dan fucking Jurgens. 6 out of 10. Yeah, I would even say 5 out of 10. It's almost kind of boring at times. And comics should never be boring. Especially superhero comics, and especially comics written by motherfucking Dan Jurgens. Punk Rock Jesus. This was a slog to get through. This is awful. This was just preachy bullshit. I get it. Religion has a lot of things wrong with it. Can you shut the fuck up now and just get to the actual goddamn story? Good, you did. Awesome. But now I'm bored. Now I don't care. 4 out of 10. Because a lot of it is good. You know, there are elements I liked. I liked some of the characters in here. None of the characters were annoying. Not even the character that spouts religious bullshit was annoying. It's just that overall, it's just too much of that. I don't mind having it in the book. I don't mind bashing religion. I am not religious. I'm not super religious. I do believe, but I'm not super religious. I don't go to church. I went to church when I was 3 years old, and again, not super religious. So I'm fine with religion being criticized. Or even bash here and there, because warranted sometimes. But just in this way, it's just annoying. It's just too much. I get it. Shut up. Batman Superman, the surprise of the week. This one I just kind of thought would be, you know, not basic, but just kind of like one of those books I read. It's like, yeah, that was okay. This was investing, like super investing, a really creative subplot that I don't think they are going to. I think it is concluded. So not the best conclusion, but an adequate one. It was good enough for conclusion. Not one that was like, oh my god, that was concluded too quickly or had a bunch of problems. They just kind of like, oh, okay. 8 out of 10. And finally, last but not least, Icon Rocket. Rocket can be a super annoying character sometimes, but it could be a hell of a lot worse. Major surprise. Honestly, this... No, because I didn't have any real expectations going in, so I can't really say it was a surprise of the week if I had no expectations in that regard. So I wouldn't say it's a surprise of the week. It's just a major surprise in general because I had nothing. I was expecting nothing, and I got something great. 8 out of 10. And that, as I say, is that. I'm going to go through these again, make sure I did my out of 10. You know what? We'll just do it again. No, because I'll probably give a different score and I'll be criticized. No, I know I did. Alright. So nice fat stack of comics review that I can return to the library tomorrow. And now I gotta get back to my books, so we are going to end it here.